Yes, welcome to the No State Project live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Glad to be with everybody today. And I want to get this out, let everybody know I appreciate the continued support of the show. Of course, Dan and Bill in New Hampshire and Nelson in Maine. Of course, now Chris in Northern California. Appreciate the next. Well, he's a big supporter of the show, and I do appreciate that. I can't say enough about how I really do appreciate the support, Chris. And hopefully we'll get to hear back from him real soon. Get an update on his what he's working with up in Northern California. If you'd like to help support the show, and it is, of course, appreciated, it is markstevens.sells.com. That's SELZ. markstevens.sells.com and markstevens.net. And of course, if you are being attacked by a bureaucrat and you want to learn how to more effectively defend yourself, markstevens.net. We've got Government Indicted, which has a whole model which is proven to be effective at limiting the damage that these predators called government want to do to us. You can get that at markstevens.net together with scripts, and I am available, of course, for consultations, which includes making those really fun calls to the IRS, which I know I've got caller shames and I've got video I have to get up. But when we spoke with, I think it was Gerard, he hasn't been. I haven't gotten an email with the dismissals yet, so it's not totally my fault for not having the video, but I'm glad he was able to get that. And so, hey, we get it in a week. That's great. I'll get the video up with all the other ones that are just sitting there waiting for me to discuss. And if you're being attacked by a bureaucrat and you want to join me on the show, great. 218-632-9399. That's 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign or the hashtag. You can also get me on Skype. You just got to instant message me first at Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. Of course, that is a Jerky Boys reference. Points if you knew that. So, if you're being attacked by a bureaucrat, let's say it's traffic, it's taxes, or it's a drug offense, any one of these kind of typical code violations, especially when there's no damage, that there's no, and it's one of them there victimless crimes. It's mala prohibita. It's only wrong because a politician said so, such as like drug possession, stuff like that. So, and if you're not being attacked by a bureaucrat, you just want to sharpen your skills. You want to be able to argue better. You want to be able to just more effectively discuss issues with people and call people, and I'm not saying a contentious discussion with them, but having a more intellectual discussion where you utilize something like the Socratic method, where you're asking probing, leading questions to basically figure out why somebody holds the belief that they do. Explain, why do you think this is true? Why is this true? Then definitely give us a call, 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. And, of course, if you disagree with what I have presented here on the show, don't consider this as some kind of huge platform, because it's not. It's just having a conversation with me. Anybody who can just pick up the phone and call and speak to somebody or have a rational, intelligent adult discussion with somebody, it's that easy to call in. You're not calling in to a huge. It's not a huge platform. We think we can all agree on that. Pretty damn effective material, which markstevens.net/ /success stories. We've been able to get a lot of stuff tossed out. So, and last time and I'll give this out later, and you guys can put it into the chat. Frank Rizzo 3 is how you get me on that there Skype. And I will be talking about, and I haven't researched this whole thing, but the New York Times has a new article out today regarding somebody who made a visit to Epstein's lawyers after he died, claiming to have videos and having evidence. I don't know if this is true, but we'll get into that. But I know we've already got, hey, We've already got callers, and it looks like one from where I'm originally from, where I cultivated this outrageous accent, Long Island itself. So why don't we do that? Why don't we get to the calls right away here today? Long Island itself. So why don't we do that? Why don't we get to All right, we've got areas code 631. You got to turn down the feed behind you. All right, we've got it.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Stephanie.
Stephanie, and you're calling from Long Island?
I'm calling from Long Island.
Can I ask where?
Right now I'm in Port Jeff, but Selden usually.
That's my hometown. I was born in Cheektowaga, but mercifully my parents moved me to Selden. We moved to the island where my parents are from. Well, they're from Brooklyn and Queens, but they moved me. That's the thing. Hold on for 1 second. You'll agree with this, I'm sure. Even when I talk to people who live on Long Island and grew up there, or they lived their whole lives there, and I'll say, well, yeah, I'm from Selden. They'll give me that blank look. So I always have to say,
right, Selden doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I always say, oh, it's this. It's sandwiched between Port Jeff and Patchogue, and they're like, oh,
right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So what can we do for you today, Steph?
Well, I have. I actually have been emailing you, but I have a ticket outstanding that I went to a court hearing, and the judge had dismissed me. She said court dismissed because I was asking her too many questions. She was getting frustrated with me. So after that, I asked her to send me some of the court transcripts because I wanted to go back and see what was it that made her so mad, And anyway, it was really just her not wanting to answer any of my questions. But now I'm going back. I just got some of your paperwork in an email today, and I'm looking at on my piece of paper where it says the complainant's name, and he just had scribbled a bunch of numbers. I can't even see what he wrote on here.
Can you make out the numbers?
So I'm not sure. No, it looks like maybe it says 4S, I guess so, 1022 3M, and then SUZ. I don't know what SUZ means.
It could just be his initials. Well, let me start by, because there's a very vocal minority of like one or two that insist that you cannot ask judges questions in court. Period. End of discussion. Judges are not there to answer questions. Did the judge answer any of your questions?
Well, she started to answer one of my questions, and it seemed to have confused her. And then what happened was she asked me where I was going to school, like if I was going to law school. And as soon as I told her that I wasn't going to school, she kind of scoffed at me and decided that she was going to treat me like an idiot from that point out. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. That's something. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what town is this court in?
Head of the Harbor. It's their private court.
Oh, for those who don't know, Head of the Harbor is one of my favorite places in the world. There's there's when we used to go as a kid, there was when you come off of that road that the post office is on, and you have to go and obviously go north, you make that turn there. There's a duck pond, right? There's a lake.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite places in the world. And for those who don't know, Head of the Harbor is one of the most wealthy places, in North America.
Right. And so they have their own cops. You can't even breathe over there.
You have to have a six-figure income to even be considered human.
Right, exactly.
With these.
One time I was at a park over there, and the cop came over to me because I wasn't supposed to be at the park. They were having a town meeting right next door, and everyone was looking at me, so they called the cops on me. Anyway, the town meeting, they seen me in the park, and they were upset. So I went to shake his hand, and I wanted to, we can't touch you. I can't touch you. I was like, did I offend you? But they're not supposed to touch you. That makes you human,
Well, you got to keep your distance for those you rule over. I can't. Wow, it was. In fact, my friend of mine's father used to work at the post office. Now, so I'm sure that building is still there. So for those who may not be aware,
Yep.
it's like 150 years old. It's got those huge white columns.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks.
It's
So we
still
have to.
there.
We have to. Well, it would be a tragedy to tear down a building like that. It's easily well over 100 years old. It's such a fantastic place. I actually started researching law not too far from Head of the Hall. I did it at SUNY Stony Brook. It was a while ago. So was. I had to prepare my own defense for a labor dispute, and that's where I started doing legal research. Where huge law library. Anyway, so let's go. So this is going down in Head of the Harbor, an otherwise beautiful place. And so the judge did answer, at least start to answer questions. So you can testify that even though the judge got upset because you weren't a law student, they were initially answering at least a question or two.
Kind of. I mean, she was being more dismissive than anything, but she was replying rather than speaking over me at that point, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So it's just for those like you who are new to going to court and whatnot, I don't want anyone to be misled by one or two people who consider themselves experts, and that we've had you and we've had plenty of other people testify on the show, as well as I have from personal firsthand experience. Judges do answer questions. Now, there's a limit to their patience, which, hey, I'll give, so we all have that. But most of them generally do answer some questions. And we get to a certain point in the questioning where it's obvious that what they're doing is grossly unfair and immoral. And that, so that's when they stop. But to say that we can't go into court and ask, I highly recommend to anybody, you go. They say that we're entitled to be informed, and you have to be informed so that you can adequately and effectively defend yourself. So you ask questions. Is it something they teach in law school? I maybe not. But some lawyers are under the impression, or some experts, you're not. I say no, that's wrong. So, okay. So, what happens? So that she's being dismissive and not answering the questions. Did she make a ruling? Oh no, wait, you didn't. You just got the motion to dismiss.
No, she didn't make a ruling. She just dismissed. She just dismissed me, basically. She asked me to leave.
She asked you to leave. So did you enter? Did she enter a plea for you?
No. She said court's adjourned. So I asked her, what do I do? And she said she wasn't going to tell me what to do.
Okay.
So she told me maybe I should get a lawyer. That's what she said.
Okay. So you're on. You would have to check the online docket to know if they entered a plea on your behalf without that's why it also helps to have a transcript. So the transcript may bear that out. And so I think I mentioned in email, you have to call the clerk and see if they have a copy of that. Now I tell you, they generally at these little courts don't record the initial appearances. They may record the trials for obvious reasons, but not necessarily. So don't be surprised if they tell you, oh, we don't have a record of an initial appearance. Okay.
And you said I should call her and see if she has, she had made a ruling on my behalf. That's what I should do.
Well, you can check the docket most courts now, they have the docket online and you can see what's happened so far. So if a plea was entered, whether you did it or whether the judge did it, would be reflected in the docket.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Yeah, because I told her I wanted to get the transcripts, and again, she threatened me. Because first of all, she threatened me when I was asking questions. Also, that she was going to have her police officers arrest me, and that was the thing. I was like, "You're going to arrest me for asking questions? Isn't that silly?"
She threatened you.
She changed the subject.
All right. So you were threatened because you were asking questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's what I would.
Wasn't. Go ahead, say it.
I would just, I would say that's bullying.
Yeah, she was very mean to me. But like when I got the transcript back, most everything that I was saying seems to be like it wasn't translatable, which is interesting. I mean, even a lot of the things she said were inaudible, and it took her forever to send them to me. made it sound like it was going to take her 3 months to even find the records. So
Wow.
it was a little weird. I didn't think it should take that long. It should be pretty easy as like looking in your files on your computer, right?
That's yeah, and head of the harbor, you're not having nearly as many people prosecuted as you're going to have in let's say Valley Stream, or Port
Right.
Washington. I mean, come on. I mean, what head of the harbor
Really?
has, if they've got more than 5,000 people there, I would really be surprised. It's not like it's a very big area. I mean, considering how much money you have to live there, yeah, they're doing a good job of keeping riffraff out there.
Yeah,
exactly.
She was just trying to like tell me how much money it was going to cost me, and then all the fines that I was going to pay, and I didn't want to do that. So I guess it was just a lot for her to think that somebody would even question her at all. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of an arrogance thing, and I just have to throw this out because I see this thing here. No one. It's like Captain Obvious over here. When I suggest about asking judges questions, and that they do answer a lot, no one is saying that the judge is under any kind of legal obligation that they will actually answer the question. I don't even know why that is even an issue, but okay, I'm not implying that the judge has to do that. There may actually be a legal obligation considering that you can only defend against that which is being disclosed to you. So if the judge is just going to make a ruling, or they're going to deny something, or they're not going to rule on something, they're not going to answer a question regarding the process and the evidence, then that could be obstruction. So I would say that due process probably creates an obligation on them to be to be professional and upfront with what they're using against you. So the idea that the judge doesn't have to answer, yeah, that's true. The judge doesn't have to answer. However, I think that you have a good due process argument that you're being denied a fair trial or fair hearing or disposition because the judge is doing things and not disclosing them to you. Now, that's not to say that the prosecution is not the one that really has the job of disclosing. But if the judge is not answering certain questions, especially about the process, then you can't effectively defend yourself. So no one is. So I think it's really a moot point. What I was addressing was the criticism that has been laid that judges don't take questions. So yeah, they do. Now, whether they decide to be professional and honest and answer the question, well, that's a different story. So, but I would again argue fairness and due process dictate that because you supposedly have a procedural due process right to be informed, so you can effectively defend yourself, the judge sitting there mute and refusing to answer a direct question regarding the process, yeah, I think I think that would be a due process violation. So, but maybe, hopefully now, if there's going to be a criticism, it'll be on a real argument instead of just. Right. Okay, so you haven't actually filed a motion to dismiss yet.
No, I haven't filed it yet. I was just looking at it for the first time today, so that's why I figured I would call, just like a checkup.
Well, hey, and for anybody who does follow the show when you are being attacked, this is what we do here on the show, is to help you through the process. We're not leaving you alone. I mean, I mentioned last Wednesday that some people getting involved with these so-called common law lawyers and get themselves in a lot of trouble. They just follow the advice blindly without any real critical analysis and seeing what value that has, if any, and if it's going to cause more damage than good. And then when you do get into trouble, well, I can't contact them anymore. They don't return. Well, yeah, of course, because you're in deep trouble here, and they help cause it, and of course they're not going to be available. But that's not the way I do it here. Contrary to a couple of people, you'll always be able to reach me and get answers to the questions. I don't have a screener. It's just me. And so you're one of the, you purchase something from this and you're able to call with the questions, and that's encouraged, of course, for everybody. That's the prime reason why I do the show. So did you have any questions regarding the motion and the procedure?
Not quite yet. I might just Skype message you if anything comes up, if that's okay.
Oh, that's always
Um,
okay.
All right, awesome. I had a couple of questions. I have been listening to somebody else, but you're easier for me to understand. I feel like what you're saying makes a little more sense to me. But I've been listening to somebody else, Rob Ryder. Have you heard of him?
No, what kind of material is he doing?
So he is kind of saying at this point that you should have like an EIN of your actual birth certificate name. You should have an EIN number for it and claim that you're doing business as the person. And then he's also saying that you should see if you can get a bond over the case, if that makes sense to you.
Well, I've heard it before. It doesn't actually make much sense because there's no actual truth to that. So the bond over the case. Now, again, this keeps coming up. There was Carl Lentz was on the show. You can go back in the archives. It's at least 3 years ago, maybe even more. And he was putting forth this notion about that there's a bond on every case, and they're making a fortune. Every ticket, even though the ticket they may collect $200, they're making thousands and thousands of dollars somehow. And I asked him 7 damn times. It wasn't until the 7th time he finally admitted that there was no evidence. It was his theory. And so for what you're looking at here, you have to ask, look, if they're saying they're talking about a bond, if they're talking about getting an EIN against the birth certificate, I'm getting stupider just thinking about trying to put those pieces together. So the idea that there's a bond on every case, there would be a paper trail for that. I would like to see the paper trail. 2, let's look at this thing with the birth certificate. Why would you get a tax ID number from the birth? Do you think for a second that, see, an EIN is a employer identification number. It's for a business. Right. It's not for, it's not. So how in the world would you go? You would have to be able to show that the birth certificate is somehow a business.
Right.
Okay, so why would you get an EIN? What is the I got to say it. What is the reasoning behind getting an employer identification number from the Internal Revenue Service for the birth certificate?
For your actual all capital letter name is what he's suggesting, and I think it is because he's saying to say that you're doing business as the name rather than you are the name or something like that.
Do you have any proof that the federal government created a corporation known as the all caps name, and that's how they're charging you here?
I have no proof or idea how to get that proof.
I don't think there is any proof.
Right.
But if you don't have any proof of that and you don't even know how to get the proof, my position on that is to just take it, well, this is absolute BS until proven otherwise, because the burden is on someone like Rob Ryder, who's going to peddle this stuff and make these claims, these wild claims. That's the first I think I've even heard of the EIN, using the EIN and having it attached to the birth certificate. Because what is happening here, guys? These people, you see, at least when I do things, I lay out the logic, and I have more than enough proof of the effectiveness of it. I can the logic stands on its own 2 feet, but I can also show success with it. I can show you.
You know what I mean? Like, you actually made sense. I could.
Yeah, well, I wanted. Hopefully, the reason why I make more sense, and is not just because I'm from Long Island and I sound like home. I hope it's because of the logic and the evidence that I relate. I've even gotten call of shames. I have call of shames with prosecutors. I have a federal judge admitting that the application of federal law is arbitrary. A federal judge, a current sitting federal judge, admitted that on film. Well, not film, but you get the point. I have as the official policy statement of the Maricopa County I can't believe Bill Montgomery's a Supreme Court judge now. But Bill Montgomery's office, their official position that of proof that the laws apply to me because I'm physically in Arizona is because they prosecuted other people. So I mean, I have a long list of evidence to back up what I'm doing. This stuff, oh my gosh,
Right.
Yeah, I would give strong legal advice here to you and everybody else. I know that there's a few people like, oh, legal advice, here we go. So we're going to get the son of a. I would not give any credibility whatsoever to this guy's theories and claims because they'll only get you into trouble.
Right. Cause more confusion even than necessary.
Yeah. You know, I can't believe that in this, you know, they're still, well, hell, look, there's still people that believe Donald Trump's, not only a good guy, but was chosen by a god to actually be president. So just because it's 2019 doesn't mean that more of the world is more rational and looking for evidence and proof and things and logic and things like that. I'm hoping that will continue. We're a growing minority there, that more people will be skeptics and reject this kind of crap. But hopefully you and no one listening and just hopefully no one is going to be a victim of these charlatans anymore. Get an EIN, attach it to the birth certificate, so you're doing business as the corporate. That
like too extra, right?
Well, no one has produced any evidence whatsoever that. So let's look at the two ways: the way I do and the way they're doing it. I have actual proof. In fact, all my critics even agree that if you're physically in Arizona, the laws apply, and that's the basis of territorial, personal, and subject matter jurisdiction. There is 100% agreement. There is no rational dispute to that. And I can ask them, and not just some person typing on the internet, but I can ask the prosecutor themselves. I do it. We do it all the time. I have the call of shames to prove it. We know that this is how they're attacking us. There is not a shred of evidence that anyone has ever presented. And I get that they can lie, but they have never presented any evidence whatsoever that they are tricking you into doing business with the straw man and as if you are the straw man. There's no evidence of the straw man. There's no evidence that there's a corporation that mimics your name in all caps. And there's not a shred of evidence that they're actually charging you that way. Now, I guess an argument, well, you think they're going to tell you the truth?
Right.
There would be more than enough former prosecutors, because they have to get the cops. You got to make sure over here, when you fill out this ticket, you got to make sure it's in all capital letters or you screw up the whole system there. We're tricking people. We want them to accept the straw man because otherwise we have no jurisdiction. That doesn't make any sense if they're committing a crime. That's because as a municipal corporation, as an artificial entity over here, because we're an artificial entity, we can only interface with other artificial entities. So because we can't go with the flesh and blood living man, we got to trick the flesh and blood living man to accept the dead entity.
But if you can just say that, how do those laws even apply to me? Then what's the point of even going down the dead entity route, right?
Well, but why bring up something that has no merit whatsoever just because it was mentioned maximus or capitis de minimis or something, things like this? It was mentioned in Black's Law Dictionary. It has to transfer to the real world, right? Why even discuss that? Well, first, it's got no merit whatsoever. Zero. I mean, absolutely none. So you guys, whoever, I don't see them here, but the few people that two or three people want to call me a leftist, Sabafungul, that's not, that doesn't prove your point. There's no merit to it. And there's no merit to any claims that that's how you're being charged. So to me, it's much more effective, and we can prove it. That's saying we can replicate the success. We're replicating it. That's incredibly important here. We know that that's how
Yeah,
they're
no, I
doing it.
know.
Yeah. We know without any doubt whatsoever. We know that's how they're attacking us. That's the foundational claim. We know because they'll tell us that. And again, I know that they are snakes. I know, I get it. They're dishonest, a criminal organization. But that is how they're charging you. That's what's going through the cop's mind. Ask them, they'll tell you. I've spoken to more than my fair share of police officers and prosecutors and judges. I've spoken to bureaucrats of pretty much all stripes, except for the very high up. You know, well, I did have a Supreme Court Chief Justice, so that's pretty good. But that has proven to be far more effective. And if you can show, and if you could get them to argue that they don't even have to prove their foundational claim, and you still don't prevail, you had no chance whatsoever. And I don't care, and I don't accept anything contrary to that, because if you can have them argue that, I don't have to prove that, you had no chance of winning at all.
Right.
Zero.
Right, because they have to prove it.
Well, right. And so even for those diehard statists, you say, well, if the prosecution can make a foundational legal claim against me with no proof, do I get to make a foundational defense claim against the prosecution without proof? No, of course not. But that's fundamentally unfair. You don't have to be a law school graduate to know that that's unfair. I don't care if the Supreme Court has ever made a specific ruling that those conditions make it unfair. The Supreme Court has ruled plenty of times that the prosecution does something that the defense doesn't get to do. That's fundamentally because it's supposed to be equal protection under the law. The rules are supposed to apply across the board. If the judge is not enforcing the rules, that's bias and prejudice. That's by definition an unfair trial. But to get back to this of following Rob Ryder, I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with them and say that what you've presented about the bond with the all cap name and getting an EIN, I think that is just ridiculous. And I think that would just get somebody in far more trouble than not. And just stay away.
Right. So as far as the paperwork you sent me today, I'm to fill it out and then I send it to the court. I send it straight to the court.
You're going to, in the instructions, remember in the instructions, you're always going to file the copies of everything with the clerk of the court. That this is for everybody. It goes to the clerk of the court that the complaint is filed in. You always have to send a copy to the opposing party where if you don't, if there's no record of a prosecutor, and here it's just traffic, it may not be, you can initially send it to the police officer at the police department. Once there is a prosecutor involved, you have no communication whatsoever with the cop under any circumstance. Unless he forces it, you do not communicate with them. Okay?
Okay. I'm taking notes here.
Well, we're recording for posterity, so.
What'd you say?
This is all recorded also.
Okay, awesome. So I can go back and listen.
Yeah.
And then just one more thing I wanted to ask you, because after the case, she did revoke my license. So I guess my license hasn't been it's been revoked since. And she expressed that she was concerned about all this money I was gonna have to pay to get my license back, whatever. So I said, maybe you can reinstate a temporary license until we figure out what to do going forward. And she was not going to do that. So I haven't had a license since, and I did get a couple of other tickets for that afterwards. So if by any chance this does get dismissed, or she doesn't want to deal with me anymore, and she dismisses the charges, whatever, will that dismissal help me in the dot license tickets, because she was the one who discredited my license? Is that a thing?
Well, it technically, I believe that if the underlying charge that caused the suspension is thrown out, then there should be an order lifting the suspension.
Okay, cool.
You may have to put in a motion to get them to do that, but they should do it.
Motion to lift suspension, like?
Well, yeah, if they don't do it, if they don't issue an order direct, on their own after throwing it out, if it gets thrown out and they don't issue an order to the DMV to lift that suspension, then you may have to file a motion saying since the charge has been thrown out, the suspension should be lifted as well.
Right. And then does that like null the other tickets? Is that like a way to?
It's only they're only going to consider from the date of the dismissal. So anything after the dismissal. So whatever, because
right.
You'll still have to fight those other ones. So.
Okay. All right. That's all.
I appreciate the call and let me know how it goes. If you have any other questions, you can Skype or you can definitely call the show again.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the call. Steph in Port Jeff. Oh, nice to talk too about Head of the Harbor. And if you're out there, and I can't remember, there's this cabana type of thing, and there's a huge, massive bust of some, I don't remember, some ancient Greek or watch it be Socrates this whole time, and I didn't put that together, But that would be cool if one of my favorite philosophers, Socrates, that was his bust at Head of the Harbor. So maybe someone can look that up and check it out. I remember as a kid thinking it was a little bit creepy, but beautiful, beautiful area. I don't know why we keep getting. I want to make clear again. I'm going to get to the caller in just a second. I am not one of these common law type guys. I absolutely, in no shape or form, support this sovereign citizen, freeman on land, patriot type of stuff. I am not a right to travel guy. This trying to feel intellectually, superior to people, like speaking Latin, set askew trust, like the way lawyers do. I'm not that kind of. I do my best to debunk that stuff and why people want to continue putting that stuff in the chat. That's not what the show is about. I thought this big anarchy A behind me. You got it's almost like the police department. They don't. I walk in with a big anarchy A on my shirt, for my radio show, and they look past that. Oh, it must be a sovereign. We got one of these there sovereign citizens. I'm not that. I think I do a pretty good job of debunking that crap when it comes up. And I urge you, look up the Carl Lentz show. I know we're going back, but that is an example of how easy, though frustrating, it can be putting one of these sovereign type or freeman on the land type of individuals to task on the claims that they're making. If you guys believe this stuff is true, gotta show the evidence. Show me the proof. Show me the proof. It all comes down to what the hell does the evidence say? That should be it. So let's get to another call. I think we got Los Angeles over here, which Los Angeles area I think is or another pretty serious fire. We have area code 818. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mark. My name is Michael David. Thank you for taking the call. I'm a first-time caller. And so my question to you pertains to the Ninth Amendment and using that as a summary judgment for the right to travel. And even if it's rejected, how it can be used to appeal afterwards.
Well, what's your actual argument? Using the Ninth Amendment to say that the Ninth Amendment says that you can travel without any kind of license or tax?
So, yeah, basically what I'm saying is it's my personal belief that the Ninth Amendment grants us the right to travel, and that whatever's a right, it's not something that we need to pay the state to be able to do this, to have a license, just like our freedom of speech. We don't need a license from the state to do that. That's my personal feeling about it. I may be mistaken. I'm kind of new to all this, so I'm trying to navigate my understanding. But basically, because the ninth is pertaining to unenumerated rights, and how we can apply that in a court case for a summary judgment for the right to travel. And even if they reject it, it can be used as a argument of to argue on appeal.
Okay, all right, I understand now. And of course, the Ninth Amendment saying the actual text of it is the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the right to travel stuff goes back a long time, and I'm glad you're calling in and asking questions about it instead of just jumping in with both feet and, let's say, pulling the license plate off the car or something like that to kind of try to test things. One of the big things when you read this stuff is where they start talking about the right to travel that is expressed as far as it's expressed both as a state right and also as a federal right, but they're not the same thing. They refer to different things. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, people have mixed the two. And what they do is they cherry pick out. I think there was a Shuttleworth case or some things like this, where there are a number of Supreme Court cases that state, and especially from the 50s and 60s, that state that the state cannot tax and regulate a federal right. And so what they do is they piece together and try to say that the federal right to travel cannot be taxed and regulated by the state. Therefore, the driver's license is a state overreach, that the state doesn't have the authority to do that because the Supreme Court said, look, no, you can't tax, you cannot convert a federal right into a taxable, privilege. And that's not actually what's happening. What they did was they cherry picked that stuff out. The right to travel, as far as, and I know the old case is to use the streets in the ordinary course of life, not as a business. That's not what the Supreme Court was talking about in the Shuttleworth case. They're talking about federal rights to travel, which would include, let's say, travel in and out of the United States, or let's say going from Florida to California. So you look at, for example, the federal right to, I don't know, let's just say to vote in federal elections. They can't tax that right because the state has no authority over a federal right like that. But what they're actually doing is, at the state level, is they are taxing a state right to travel. And what they did was they changed their laws. This is the problem with trying to argue the law and what the legal interpretation. They changed the laws to include, because they didn't always tax and regulate, or at least tax the private travel. But when it started to be the new, it started taking over as the main conveyance of the day, and still is, to pay for the streets and the regulation under the police power. They passed these laws that, with driver's license. Now, I've said 1,000 times on the show, if anyone thinks that the operator's license is the same as a chauffeur's license, go ahead and test it. You'll find out real fast. They will still prosecute you because there's a separate license. The operator's license cannot be used for commercial uses. That's just, okay. So I don't think you'd have any success arguing that the Ninth Amendment prohibits the state because there's a mountain from taxing and regulating a state right. Because there's a mountain of Supreme Court cases and appellate cases to the contrary that they can do that. I think you'd have to challenge it on different grounds.
Would the grounds of arbitrary and capricious in a situation where, let's say, for example, you've had a license for, I don't know, maybe like 20, 30 years, and now because of your safe driving record, there really isn't a genuine safety concern as to your driving safety, since it's they're using their safety concerns and police powers to establish the regulation in the first place.
Well, safety is part of it, but it's also going to pay for the regulation. It's also going to pay for the actual roads, for example, and infrastructure. And honestly, you got somebody out there that's been driving 30, 40 years. I think they're more of a risk than, I think after you get through, and I'm sure, insurance actuaries and statistics would bear this out. Once you get into your mid-20s, yeah, your insurance goes down because you've been driving a while and you've shown that you've gotten much better and it's much easier. And then there's going to be a period of time, a few decades, where, yeah, you're doing pretty good, but then you're going to start to decline. As we get older, the eyesight, the reflexes, not as good. I can certainly say that anybody above 75 is at least as much of a risk behind the wheel as somebody under 25.
Sure.
So I think something like that, if you're attacking it on a factual basis, I think you'd have a lot more. It will be a lot more effective. Now, whether the courts are going to actually agree with you, that's a tall order. But I think you can do a lot better, because look, when I bring it, for example, or Steph, or people who follow the show, we can get them to argue that they don't have to even prove their foundational claim. Now, that should be the be all end. That should be the end of their case. That should be it. But that's showing how effective the challenge is. When you can actually push them into a corner, Mike, where they're arguing, well, I don't even have to prove that. I've got one here. She doesn't come on during the live feeds, but I've done videos about her comments. She is she's one of the critics that say, well, law is different. They don't need evidence. Oh, yeah, okay. So, but what you're talking about, they're always going to be able to counter. So you may be absolutely right in your reading of the law. We'll just assume that. But when they have 100 years of their court cases to counter that, you don't stand a chance.
Right. Well, I was just thinking, because of the precedents that they've established, for example, they'll say, well, all motor vehicles must be registered and so forth. But yet, for example, certain types of motor vehicles, they don't register because they don't pose a sufficient safety issue. Or in the case of post office their vehicles aren't registered to the state either.
Well, that's a different reason,
license plates on,
I'm sorry, but I talked about this before, and maybe we'll get someone's head to explode here. The reason why you don't see the post office, or let's say a military vehicle, the United States government, the reason why they don't have a state ID is because the state can't tax the operations of the federal government. And it's a tax. It doesn't matter what anybody claims, it's a tax. The driver's license is absolutely a tax. I'm sorry, but there is no reasonably disputing that. And so that's why you don't see, it's not a matter of safety. It's just the states have no authority to tax the operations of the federal government unless there's an agreement. That's that. And I get that they're using definitions, and it's just, we can't win or prevail on definitions. Let's just say, because if you're looking, they're going to have 1,000-to-1 citations to use against your one, and they're going to go with that.
Yeah.
Especially since the right to travel stuff, all those cases people are using for that, if they're actually talking about an automobile in the ordinary course of life, those cases have all been overturned. All of them, at least on that particular issue. That issue was all overturned, all of them, all 48 at the time. because they all changed their laws. So
I see.
yeah, you have.
Do you know of any of them that have been fought on the basis of the 9th?
There probably are, where people are saying that they're reserving the right, but because the courts have unanimously held that the states this is just their argument. It doesn't apply to a factual charge. It's okay just to the legal charge.
Right.
They have a constitutional right, to tax and regulate certain state rights, and as a privilege to pay for the regulation of that activity. So somebody probably threw the 9th Amendment in there at one time. And I think under that, the legal reasoning, I think the 9th Amendment would fall also.
I see. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking my questions.
Oh, no problem. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
That's I'm glad it's much better for us to discuss these issues rather than before anything is done, where you're investigating them, rather than just jumping in and deciding to challenge these things. And I can't stress enough that going against them is already going to be difficult. If we're going to go against something that's as well established as the driver's license or the vehicle license tax, the license plate. If you're going to challenge that, you got to do your homework. You have got to use a more effective way. It's just like with taxes. You may have a great argument, and it could be based on facts. It could be based on a solid understanding of their own laws. But if they have conflicting court cases, we can say, well, of course, it's common that you're going to have conflicting appellate cases. Yeah, you do. On taxes, they're going to be pretty straightforward that they may differ, but one thing will be that they will all oppose your reading of the law. Okay? And that's not good. That's why it's so much better to attack their claims on a factual basis. Hell, get them arguing, I don't have to prove that. That's, because if you have them arguing, or you have anybody arguing, that they don't have to prove their claim is true, you've made your point. Anybody who does not see that as a bad argument and reject it is just either stupid because they don't understand what's going on, or they're so grossly biased against the truth that the facts won't change anything. The facts just won't change. It's just like you have a DOJ report that comes out and is completely the opposite of what Bill Barr and Donald Trump said, that the Obama administration was spying on the Trump campaign. Now, it's supposed to be released next week, if it's not already. Completely undercuts and contradicts their narrative. And there's going to be millions of people that just don't accept it. More deep state guys against Donald Trump, the chosen one of God. That actually came out this week. No shame whatsoever. None. Rick Perry. Well, the man, on top of all the other things he's done, including allowing an innocent man to die in the gas chamber. It wasn't bad enough that he lost his entire family to a fire. No. Put him to death. Then again, if my whole family was killed, I think I'd welcome the needle. But Rick Perry oversaw that. But this guy came out and said recently that Donald Trump was chosen by a God and put in as president. I got to tell you, if there's something that could be used to foster atheism or agnosticism or agodism. It's having someone like Donald Trump be proclaimed to be God's chosen one. Oh my gosh, I thought we were done with this divine right of kings nonsense. Apparently it's alive and well in 2019, and it's absolutely beyond the pale that he's not called out on it. My gosh, what trash. My gosh, that is just mind-numbingly stupid. Donald Trump. He even said, maybe he was just joking, but Rick Perry isn't. Donald Trump, chosen of God. Yeah, I'm sorry for smacking into the microphone there, but my gosh, that is. You see, and how does it tie into that? No ruling class. This is what you get. You get substandard people who are given violent control over millions of people with no accountability whatsoever. None. That is why anarchy. Speaking of someone who's not getting it's not being held to account. And I know Alexander Acosta actually had him go to jail, not prison, jail, and he was gone, half the day. Should have been in prison the rest of his life. Knocking it down to prostitution. First of all, there's nothing morally wrong with prostitution. As long as you have two consenting adults. That's not what he was doing. Child trafficking. Oh, but he held him to some. Yeah, there was some minor accountability there. Yeah. Nothing compared to what he should have gotten. And his co-conspirators got nothing. Nothing. Even though his accounts and the information when they raided, that there were hundreds of high-level politicians, bureaucrats, and wealthy CEOs and whatnot implicated in that. Well, it came out here in the New York Times today. Says that soon after the child sex criminal, I added that part, the child I added. He's not just a sex criminal, child sex criminal. When he died in August, a mysterious man met with two prominent lawyers. Towering, barrel-chested, and wild-bearded, he was a prodigious drinker and often wore flip-flops. He went by a pseudonym, Patrick Kessler, a necessity, he said, given a shadowy, dangerous world that he inhabited. He told the lawyers he had something incendiary. Ooh, that's a big word for me. Incendiary. A vast archive of Mr. Epstein's data stored on encrypted servers overseas. He said he had years of the financier's communications and financial records, as well as thousands of hours of footage from hidden cameras in the bedrooms of Mr. Epstein's properties. We know that the FBI wound up taking a lot of videos and pictures and the cameras. They knew that they could see pictures. They'd have pictures. You could see the cameras. It's true stuff. The videos, Kessler said, captured one of the world's richest, most powerful men in compromising sexual situations, even in the act of rape. Why can't you just do like a WikiLeaks? Do like the Panama Papers. Dump the information. Get it out there. Kessler said he wanted to expose these men. Yeah. I'm not saying go through WikiLeaks, but do a dump like that. If he was telling the truth, his trove could answer one of the Epstein saga's most baffling questions. How did a college dropout and high school math teacher amass a purported 9-figure fortune? One persistent but unproven theory was that he ran a sprawling blackmail operation that would explain why mogul scientists, political leaders, and a royal, Andrew, stayed loyal to him. Even in some cases, even after he went to jail. We all know Prince Andrew still spent time with Jeffrey Epstein after he went to jail 10 years ago. Kessler's tale was enough to hook the two lawyers, the famed litigator David Bose and his friend John Stanley Pottinger. If Kessler was authentic, his videos would arm them with immense leverage over some very important people. So they discussed a plan. They could use the supposed footage in litigation or to try to reach deals with men who appeared in it, with money flowing from into a charitable foundation. In encrypted chats with Kessler, Mr. Pottinger referred to a roster of potential targets as the hit list. No, I'm sorry, the hot list. Well, it really could be, both. He described hypothetical plans in which the lawyers will pocket up to 40% of the settlements and could extract money from wealthy men by flipping from representing victims to representing their alleged. I don't know if it's true. It's they had to do some fact checking here. I would hope. I just think, I guess it's wishful thinking. It's like being an anarchist that someday we're not going to have a world with rulers, that we won't have a ruling class. Should just dump it. It's like Rudy Giuliani saying that if he gets thrown under the bus, which he was by Trump, he's got insurance. If you've got this evidence, dump it. Dump it. As somebody's saying at this point, JC, at this point in time, more than likely, Jeffrey Epstein is enjoying having sex with a child. Yeah, probably right now. That's horrible to think, but he very well may still be alive. But what's interesting, too, that came out, I didn't plan on talking about this. I wanted to get into this other thing here. But one of the bankers at Deutsche Bank that gave Donald Trump one of those questionable loans, that after Trump got a huge loan from Deutsche Bank, didn't pay it back, and sued them, they gave him another loan. Millions. Well, he's been Epsteined. He allegedly hung himself. Yeah, I'm sure he did. I'm sure, yeah, just as likely as Epstein hanging himself. Sure he did. But definitely check out. I'll have to put the link in the description there so you can see what, because I'm not going to obviously read the whole thing. But I'll put that link in the description so everybody can go check that out. And we'll, I'm not putting too much stock in this. You have the proof. You want to expose them. Get it out there. Expose all of them. None of this Jimmy Savile crap. No more of this Franklin cover-up crap or the Dutroux affair in Belgium. You got the goods. Do like the Panama Papers. Because unlike the Panama Papers, something may actually be done. It would be nice. Certainly would be nice. All right there, everybody. I think what we're going to do is we're going to end it there. I think we covered some good ground. Really good calls. I really appreciate that. And I would encourage people to do like what Michael did out there in California. If you're looking at things like Rob Ryder and this kind of stuff, call about it. We can discuss it. But if you don't feel comfortable calling, then at least apply the Socratic method. Be a skeptic. Assume that what they're saying is totally false until you can verify or they can verify it. Because, they prey on people that are in bad situations where they're stressful and you want relief. You just want the attack to stop. So you hear these things and they make these wild claims. Oh, do this. Oh, if you file the paperwork, you don't even have to go to court. It's not true. But it helps because you seem to have some hope that the stress is going to stop. So you do it. So hopefully we can save people from that. Yeah, Iron Maiden does rock. Absolutely. Yeah, that's number of the beast there, baby. And Dana's also saying, have Rob Ryder on the show. Rob Ryder or anybody who peddles that stuff is more than welcome to call into the show. Dissent is welcome on the show. If you don't like or you think I'm totally off base on my argument, my claim about this patriot type stuff, the name in all caps, all that stuff. Oh, that's in all caps. I just know is the No State Project magically a corporation now? It's on all caps. Oh, my name's not in all caps though, but maybe the No State Project is, but it's nonsense. So anyway, appreciate everyone tuning into the show, especially considering the weekend it is. I will be live on Wednesday, so if you're not able to call in today, then definitely give us a call on Wednesday. I will check. Nobody's trying to reach me on Skype. Appreciate the continued support of the show, Chris. Really, if you want to help support the show, it's much needed and appreciated. markstevens.sales.com, and it's markstevens.net is my website. And if I do get Gerard's evidence of the tickets being tossed out, I will have that posted next week also. But that's enough for today. I will be live Wednesday, and till then, salud.